Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed. Hooray! We are in the book we've been reading continuously on this podcast. We've taken a break from the other books because this book, oh my goodness, it is so good. Such a good book. Last time we covered the significance of understanding the nature of understanding itself. While the book has led us to discover that the purpose of existence for sentient beings is to move, or human sentient beings, or any sentient being at this level of development, is to move from what causes problems, belief, to what solves problems and allows us to reach our excellence, understanding. From belief to excellence. Hooray. Which requires us to understand both. We have been, and I'm a little bit hot, let me just turn down the volume a little bit. Should be good here. I think we should be good here. So understand the nature of the beliefs that we have. Well, we have been gaining insight into everybody's personal image and belief of themselves, or belief about self and reality that causes their image thinking. Could even turn it down a little bit more, I think. There we go. So our fundamental false beliefs about ourselves and reality, that is a pathologos we all carry. That's where our image of our individual self comes from, which is inconsistent or incompatible with the true self that we are seeking in this game. Zeus is how we represent the ultimate goal and purpose for human beings, to be ourselves, guided by divine wisdom, functioning providentially for all living and non-living beings. That's a sentence. You don't have to say the whole thing. You can say, oh, that's Zeus. So representing everything we're learning about the nature of self and reality and our purpose as characters, that's mythology. So not only do we have to understand what belief is, and the two fundamental classes of kinds of belief that cause human problems, our individual pathologos, our individual image of ourselves, but not only that, but the cultural pathologos, the cultural beliefs that cause problems in societies, specifically the Abrahamic religious beliefs. We also have to understand what understanding is. We did a lot of that last time. How can we use understanding itself to understand what understanding is and function through it, so that when we come to conclusions, they're not based on opinions or belief or make-em-ups. They are always true universally, and we can understand that ourselves. Whenever we doubt ourselves, we can use understanding to say, well, this is nothing to do with physical senses or opinions. These are truths that are eternal, based on the structure and nature of understanding itself. But also we can communicate it, therefore, to others, because no one gives a two craps about your beliefs unless you're a grifter or a con artist. But people care about understanding. And if it's something understandable, then they can see it themselves. There's no need for them to believe you, as there is no need for you to believe them or anyone else, like the dudes that wear the funny hats and say, I know what God wants because look at my funny hat. Now, so not only do we have to understand belief and understanding, but one of the tasks that we have here is to share that. If we go through all this work, we'll have all this fun to recognize that the mastery of understanding, or the dialectic, the skill of understanding, the art that we're here to master, is the purpose of life, well, we need someone to talk to. Because the dialectic is a two-person game. It's not a solo quest. You're all wizards, Harrys.
You're a wizard.
You're all wizards, Harry, because this is the quest for everyone. And there was a lovely quote we read earlier. Many are the staff bearers. Many are the people who call themselves mystics and carry a big staff or wear a funny hat with a big cross on it or tassels on it or covers their whole face or whatever their funny hat is. Many are the staff bearers, few are the true mystics, they're philosophers. That's us. Philosophers are lovers of understanding. Now, there is a difference between modern philosophy, as we've been seeing, that's based on the teachings of Aristotle, who rejects Socrates and Plato. Plato kicked him out of the academy. Materialism, which is the rejection of philosophy itself, and that's what we teach in schools, Aristotelianism. Stoicism, which is the language of metaphysics without any reference to metaphysics itself. Physical world stuff. One level up is Plato, who talks about being, and above Plato is Socrates, who talks about the cause even of being, the self, giving us 3 stages of development. If you love learning, you could say, well, if you're stuck in the physical world, you're Aristotelian. If you realize that understanding has to be universal and has universal principles, you're Platonic. Especially if you are interested in seeing and experiencing those principles. But you're Socratic if you recognize that even that has causes and the self is beyond that. So to know the self is Socratic. Socratic philosophy. And as everyone is here to know the self, we can say, well, there isn't really many philosophies, there's just one. There's one, and there's variations of interpretations. And we're also seeing that same problem happens in religion, because while Jesus had teachings that we can see in the Gospel of Mark and the Gnostic Gospels, very different from Paul, who teaches the opposite, we can recognize, well, even though he might have said one thing, there are many, many people who interpret or feel a need to interject their own personal beliefs, which always makes me sad. Why? There's nothing good in your brain. It's reality that intelligence comes from. The fervent loyalty to one's stupid ignorance is something that has always amazed me. Why? Why hold strongly to a piece of coal that's burning your hand away? Why not let it go? And use your hand for better things, like high-fiving the next person. So, understanding beliefs, understanding itself, which allows us to understand beliefs and understand knowledge. The two together, understanding and knowledge, gives us wisdom. That's philosophy. And beyond that, we can reach what is a state we can understand, but is beyond the grasp of knowledge, the self. Socratic. But not only is that what we're here for, from belief to understanding, we have a task to share it with others, so we have people to talk to. Hey. Because the art of dialectic is a conversation. Okay, that's a lot. A conversation to help people remove their beliefs that cause their problems, develop an understanding, to reach truth, to unpack the meaning of their dreams that is needed for both, and to make their own creations themselves. Their own creations being mythology. How can you represent these metaphysical principles in a story or a mythology to share it with others, so people can wake up to this game and we have people to talk to. Got to have someone to talk to practice the dialectic. Therefore, the art of dialectic has those 4 expressions. The truth in philosophy, removing the false in midwifery, both in dream analysis and sharing it is mythology. These are all applications of the dialectic we're here to master. Now, we also last time broke down that final section, the mythology, making the stories, talking to your friends over coffee. Where's my coffee? Here it is. We broke that down into the elements that we've been reading in the text. Let's look at it on the board. Well, so far in the section we've just been going through, we have seen that we have to be reading this very book mythologically. This book is a demonstration of mythology that we've been defining. So what does Socrates and Jesus represent? What do the children of Israel or the children of Abraham represent? Followers of Abraham compared to the Hellenes? Beliefs and understanding. Give you a bit of a clue. But the highest functioning of that, learning and seeing the text itself mythologically, is to gain a familiarity with the use of analogies, to go from symbols or images to the level of meaning through the use of analogies, using the self, logos, and dialectic to make that jump. That jump itself is anagogic, which is upward moving. That's what the word means. And as we do that, we gain an affinity for that process, which helps us to learn the language of our own dream maker. So the highest functioning or demonstration of mythology is to unpack the meaning of your own dreams. But you don't stop there, because your life itself is a mythological representation of the metaphysical principles of reality and the conflict between your own beliefs and images of those things. So that's the dynamic, that's the conflict in drama. People love drama, people love conflict, people love gossip, but what the soul is really seeking to understand behind all of that is this. If the purpose of life is the movement from beliefs into understanding, and understanding itself is the representation in time of metaphysics, all of these metaphysical principles that we're learning about is represented in time in understanding, known all at once in knowledge. The two together is wisdom, and that's what the self, which is above that, uses to function providentially. That's Zeus. Then everything in our life is either the fun expression of Zeus or some expression of the conflict of that movement itself. So people love gossip, people love drama. But the thing about it is often it stagnates. We see there is a conflict. We see there is a conflict between Jessica and Ross, and for Phoebe and Ross and Rachel on Friends. But one of the tropes is there isn't really a resolution. There isn't really any learning. In fact, this was recognized by Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David. They recognize, oh yeah, a sitcom doesn't have any growth or learning. No one gets better. The reason why is we don't have this. We don't have the understanding of mythology. because that drama between understanding or metaphysical principles and our false personal beliefs from childhood and our culture, beliefs and images, our personal drama is a mythological representation of this very conflict. The conflict between Ross and Rachel, the conflict within our soul, the conflict between Jessica and Frank on MILF Island, or whatever other thing is interesting, or Wonder Woman and Superman. You name it, the interest that we have in drama and stories, it is this. The difficulty is while we can recognize drama and problems, we can't solve the problems unless we develop an understanding of mythology, because it's a mythological or using characters and relationships playing out of principles. We seek justice, that's a principle, but we have a false belief of justice that's in conflict with justice. So while this guy thinks he's doing the right thing by shooting all the brown people, or, whatever the villain in Superman does, then we, the audience, knows, well, that's not really just. And we saw in the book, it's one who has themselves moved from their own beliefs and images into the true experience of a reality where they can understand the ideals of justice, the excellence of beauty and excellence itself, and then has gone beyond that to know the self, and then returned, has a vision that is better than 10,000 Sharon guns, or 10,000 eyes, because they have experienced both reality in being, knowledge, and they can recognize people's images and beliefs and know what they are images of. Because you've seen the real things, you know what they're images of. Therefore, you can use this understanding that this very conflict between the two is expressed in their everyday thoughts and in their dreams in two different ways. And you can use that understanding and recognition along with your art of dialectic to benefit. That's providence. That's how you help things and solve problems. That's also the ideal of excellence that Plato describes and Socrates points to in this book that we're reading. So we love drama, but we get stuck in drama because we haven't learned how to move mythologically from the characters of the drama to what they represent as metaphysical principles or aspects of reality. That's an anagogic movement through analogy to meaning. That's mythology. And you get the best drama every night when you sleep, because while you've walked out of this or that movie or turned off this or that show or got bored in this or that conversation over coffee about gossip, you've never gotten bored of your dreams. Therefore, if this is the nature of art, to represent mythology, if that's what art is, if that's what drama is, then the master of this art is your own dream master. And you get an example of excellence every single night, about 4 or 5 times a night. So we have 4 or 5 different dreams every about 90 minutes where we have rapid eye movement. So if you really want to study your dreams, you can set an alarm that goes off every hour and a half to 2 hours and record that and then go back to sleep. If you want to race through your development like a thief, like a rogue, class of rogue. So while this plays out in our formal mythology, our Love Island and MILF Island and Lord of the Rings and Lord of the Thrones and King of the Hobbits, and what else is popular at the moment? Severance? Yeah, that's good. Haven't seen it yet. It also plays out in our everyday life. The Zionistic Jews, or the Jews that are following their dear leader, Netanyahu, and their idea of justice to be killing all of the non-believers and taking their land, because their idea of God is his idea of the highest vision of their God is for them to rule everything. They are the chosen people. Now, this is a common feature in religion. For some reason, the highest vision of everyone's God is for them to be the rulers of everything in the physical world. Aristotelianism. They are so ignorant that they think the physical world is all that exists. So who gives a shit about treating people nicely? Surely there's no soul that has to account for or answer to how you function in this world, so just lie and cheat and steal and get all the stuff. Aristotelianism, or the consequence of materialism, and the lack of Socratic or Platonic philosophy. So there's a drama. But also, we're stagnant. How long has the genocide against the Palestinians been going on for? How long has the American government just been murdering people without due process who they don't like? How long have billionaires been siphoning all of the water? Money is water. We need money to live like we need water to live. How long have the billionaires been siphoning it off into their pockets for their 12th yacht? At the expense of millions of people starving to death and billions of people living in poverty. Unnecessarily. Not needed. Everyone could have everything. That's a level of immaturity and irrationality that results necessarily from a species functioning through the cognitive level of belief. Necessarily, belief is anti-human and anti-life. And by definition, anti-understanding, mind, and self, the three levels of development beyond belief. Represented through understanding itself, a massive difference. Everything is relative to personal opinions. Belief, there we go, that's the cause of conflicts and division. Understanding is better, that has the logos. Knowledge is even higher, has the logos. And Zeus, or the one self, where the logos is an inherent, transcendent state of being, is beyond even that. So if you understand something, why would you believe someone else? If you have knowledge, why would you believe someone else? Of course you wouldn't. Therefore, in principle, that division or others to others or conflict of belief is directed primarily at understanding. So we fear and hate understanding to be a believer. Knowledge, you can't know the mind of God. That's heresy and the self. You have to sacrifice your own self goals in order to be a follower or a believer. So that's why it inevitably functions as a cause of conflict in the world and will end in the destruction of all life on our planet. Unless we wake up to the love of understanding, philodoinoia, which is what we do here. Hooray for us. So, we're stagnant, we're stuck. There are good people out there who actually have a good heart and care for the world and have a good brain. Kind of looks like one of those raccoon hats. Good heart and good head. Who are doing their best to understand the problems in our world. But the next step is to understand understanding itself. That's what we do here. So you can recognize the cause of problems. The cause is belief. As a cognitive level of development we are evolving through. And the solution is understanding. So we better understand what understanding is. And of course, understanding leads to those other states as well. Understanding is, you can know those principles of understanding eternally in knowledge and in a transcendent way through the Zeus or self. Which is our goal, to know the self. know thyself. But we can also represent these levels of development or cognitive functions, not in our anagogic movement, but in the downward movement of creation. The one self is reflected into knowledge, which is the inherent intelligibility of the one self, or the logos is the name for the inherent intelligibility of reality, the inherent ordered, knowable order, hierarchically arranged. So that is the highest experience humans have experienced. You can understand that. So if you're a scientist, you're like, hey, scientist out there, where do you base your principles? Well, we use experiments. We have experiences of things and we reflect on those experiences to induce or imagine laws or principles of reality that make sense of these experiences. Well, why not look at the highest experience? In mind. Many people have had the experience in mushrooms or meditation or near-death experiences, lots of different ways of this experience, and people talk about it in the same way. If you do that, you can derive that there are principles or the logos. And by the way, that experience, separating the soul from the body to have that experience, Socrates describes in this book as the exercise of philosophy itself. So it's not a bottom-up understanding, it's a top-down. You have the greatest experience possible, and then from that you move down. Therefore, we can understand our physical world as a reflection of that. So, as the pure one reflects into that experience that we can have, so too does that experience reflect in time in principles that we can understand, so we can make use of that in understanding. And that understanding of the principles of the mind has a further reflection. So while being creates understanding that we can participate in as human beings, humans have their own distorted version of creation because we create beliefs. We say, hey, there's a person and he knows everything and nothing can be changed. You can't go above Jesus or Muhammad or Joseph Smith or Zeno or L. Ron Hubbard. It's all, he has it all. And he creates a system based on his problems and level of vision and understanding. That's beliefs. And it's why it's a cause of problems, because it comes from people's ignorance, not from reality itself. And then people who leave beliefs evolve into that fifth stage, which is a massive difference. So, if people who claim to know principles are believers and they reject reason and all of their stories are crazy, then I think there is no God or no divine, and there is no principles. Everything's just relative to perception. If you don't know that, you're a fool. That's a massive difference. That's people who leave belief-based thinking without removing the effects of belief-based thinking and think, well, these religious experts, if that's what God is, then I reject it. No, they themselves have rejected understanding. Your job is to pick it up again or undo the lasting effects. So, and the way that we do that is through mythology. Hey, welcome, Sus. Wow, so many great emojis today. What do we have? We have a little goat with a Roman soldier's hat. We have a twerking cat and a cat hit by cheese. Dancing mushrooms. We were just talking about mushrooms. And some love hearts. How are you? I am excited because today we're finally going to get into sin and punishment. What's the real word that has been translated as sin that has been causing so many problems in our world? We're getting into that today. How are you going? What has been puzzling your mind lately? Sin and punishment is the theme for today. So we were reviewing what we saw last time, that the reason why we love drama and conflict in gossip or in TV shows is because drama and conflict, either in the world or in gossip or in our stories, if you like Lord of the Rings or Lord of the Thrones or Game of the Hobbits or whatever it is a representation of the conflict between belief-based cognition, which is a distorted shadow of reality, and our movement into understanding and experiencing the real thing. So we want justice, we want beauty, we want excellence. The cause of problems is we take a distorted shadow of that as reality in beliefs and images. That's the cause of conflict. I believe it's just to kill all the non-believers. It's not justice. That's why there's conflict. But you can understand and experience, understanding and knowledge, the true nature of these things, and that's our purpose, to move from belief to understanding. And the reason why we still have the same problems, we still are fighting Nazis, we have 15 episodes of Friends and no one learns or gets better, is because we just have the observation of the conflict. We don't know how to transcend from the conflict into the meaning of those images. That's an anagogic movement to principles. That's mythology. They get to go to the gym. I went to the gym. I did arms today. So you can see my biceps are huge. You can't because I'm wearing a jumper. Just believe me. Trust me, bro. They're swole. I'm super swole in my arms today. Oh my God. So strong in my biceps that even if you see them, your eyes will cry with how beautiful the strength is in my biceps. That's why I have to wear a jumper today. Arms day today. That didn't make any sense. I got to get better at using analogy. Fangirls and fanboy, yes, swarm of fangirls and fanboys in the chat, not at the gym. I go to the gym where there's where there's not very many people around, so I can rule the jukebox. I like to listen to the songs that I'm learning, that I'm going to be playing tonight, so I can learn the lyrics and listen to the intricacies of the beauty and the harmony within the songs in the big gym speakers. Can blast it, and I can warm up my voice. It goes like this. La 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 la. See? I do that when I lift up the weights. And it helps when I go early because there's the higher that you show a fun and interest in beauty and harmony, the more likely you are to trigger the pathologos response from believers and image thinkers, what we call gym bullies. I don't like that you're having fun. They're imitating their parents who reacted in the same way to them having fun. Now, what we're seeing is mythology is recognizing that everything in your life is not personal. The gym bullies are not personally relating to me. They don't see me. They see a projection of their beliefs and images from their childhood. So what you recognize in mythology is all human activity is mythology. They are themselves slaves. Did Sir Jim Jock of the Jock Brigade bother? No, I wasn't there today. The gym bullies weren't there today. But I would ignore them anyway. Sometimes they throw their bags around, so I pay them attention. But it's just a little bit too childish for me now. Straight to the corner. Yeah. But they're not in control. That's the thing. The beliefs and images we take as reality control us. So they don't see you or me. They see reflections of their images. That's projection. But also, they are following the inherent principles of reality, whether they like it or not. Their pathologos beliefs and their cultural beliefs or religious beliefs rule them. Not only that, the conflict that they play out exists as metaphysical principles. Any person who has pathologos individual beliefs and religious beliefs that we're learning about will play out the conflict, because that conflict between beliefs and understanding is a metaphysical principle of reality. That's why they're zombies. They don't have a choice. They've lost their will to beliefs, or to Abraham's will. You're going to go and lurk and view. Oh, I'm glad that you are lurking. But this is what we saw last time. We have to recognize that and not take the responses of people personally, but recognize they themselves are playing out mythology. They're not in control. Their family and religious beliefs are in control, and the images that result are in control. And that is itself not in control, because that is following the principles of reality. The principles of reality show that our soul's purpose is to move from beliefs into understanding, and if we don't, we will necessarily play out the conflict that blocks our anagogic or upward movement. In other words, we will respond negatively to beauty and inspiration, or Aphrodite, and understanding and harmony, Apollo, therefore blocking our development to our art that we're all here to master, the dialectic, Hermes, which is the gift from Prometheus to allow us to reach Zeus. That's mythology. Recognizing it in everyone, not taking it personally, and doing your best to use Hermes to benefit, whether they be gym bullies or whoever they are, relative to where they are. That's the question that we're on at the moment. Our task is to share this, because they don't know this. They're blocked from understanding by being believers. We have been learning this, but our job is to share it, because it's for everyone. So how do we see everyone in our life through mythology and respond in the most beneficial way to help their soul wake up to it? So no blame, no punishment, and no idea of sin, because they're going to fight back. You're saying my beliefs are wrong? Screw you, your beliefs are wrong. I'm going to fight you and show I'm a good believer. That's always going to be the response when you challenge the people's beliefs. Because we recognize it's not a blame game or a punishment game. We understand the idea of sin, that you are innately bad or a small being, is wrong. They don't. These fundamental negative, anti-life, anti-learning principles are inherent to belief. So if they're a believer, that's their worldview. And even though we don't have it, they are going to reinterpret what we say and do in the context of their own belief structure. That's why it's all projection for the right wing. That's why the right wing don't trust left-wingers who want to help people. You're just lying to scam. That's because everyone in their world is a scammer. What's this saying? To a crook, everyone is a thief. To a right-winger, everyone is a grifter. So, given that understanding, how do we practice sharing the dialectic in a way that benefits the soul of all people? That's our quest. So, to learn mythology, which is, to review, Prometheus gives us the dialectic, or Hermes, as a gift to mankind to solve problems and reach excellence. We reach Hermes through love and logos. That's represented as Aphrodite and Apollo. The two together give us Philodianoia. That's the name of the study. We are here to master this art of dialectic, which is expressed in philosophy, to reach the truth of self and reality and understanding, to remove the false beliefs about logos, understanding, mind and self. That's through midwifery. Dream analysis, you apply the dialectic for that, and we need to share it. We're looking at how we share it. We learn what mythology is by reading the way we're doing and seeing our texts, applying it in our texts. That's how we get the definition of That's how we get the definition of mythology. By the way, all we are doing is applying the structure of that very dialectic to that part of the dialectic. If dialectic is the art, then we can represent it as self itself, philosophy, self to others, the highest functioning, midwifery, others to others in every dream we have, and sharing it so others can return and learn it. That's mythology. So that's the dialectic to understand the dialectic. And within this part of the dialectic understanding of the dialectic mythology, we also unpack it with the dialectic. It's dialectic all the way down, baby. Hooray. So we get the definition by reading the text to know what it is. Gives us an affinity to unpacking our dreams. That's the highest use we can do. But we can also function to, that's how we function with what we've defined, self to self. We've defined that self. Now how does that self function to us? By unpacking our dreams, by understanding mythology, how it works, to go from the conflict represented in the characters, their states of minds and their drama, anagogic movement to the meaning that they represent, the principles and causes they represent. That's the movement from drama to meaning, or the anagogic movement. That's mythology. Creating mythology is going down. Unpacking mythology is going up. So that's how we use it, but we can master this. This will allow us to master it. Therefore, we ourselves, so this is, the self is mythology. So definition is mythology itself in relation to itself. How it functions to others. The others we're picking is our dreams. You could pick any other. It's up to you. But the S is the subject, and you pick another. That's most relevant. I reckon the most relevant is us. You, your soul. Therefore, you demonstrate it in your own dreams that you get every night. But now you, or your soul, can function to others. Everyone in your life. Everyone in your life is acting out a function of the metaphysical ideals or principles as themselves a personification. Everyone's playing out their own drama. So in your life, you can personify the highest ideals that you have come to see. So the ideals of Hermes, the ideals of Prometheus, to share Hermes, Apollo and Aphrodite, be most beautiful and most harmonized. Benefit, providence. Can you be providential? Zeus uses all the gods to benefit all things. So yourself as a personification, as a myth, all others in the world as a collective mythology, what we see in the drama in our world or in our everyday experiences or in the gossips that we watch, themselves are personifications of these metaphysical principles being sent to you by self or Zeus, that if you unpack it, you gain the providence. That's the principle of mythology. If you take it literally, you're a barbarian. If you're not doing this, you're a barbarian. We saw that in the text. But if you are doing this, if you use the dialectic and analogy to raise to metaphysical principles, you can unpack the meaning of your dreams. You can unpack the meaning of, you can personify it in your life. You can unpack the meaning of your everyday conflict. Otherwise, you'll just be angry at the injustice that you're suffering. Because without that mythological movement to meaning, it's just shitty things. Shitty genocide, shitty gym bullies, shitty people negatively reacting to the best people in the world. Yeah, that sucks. That's the injustice. That is the that will necessarily play out because beliefs and image thinking are unjust. And it's not until we recognize understanding allows us to understand and know real justice, then of course this is going to play out with injustice. And only when we embrace a love of understanding can we actually find true justice in principle. So of course, If that didn't occur, if we could live in a harmonized world with beliefs still kicking it, that would be a shitty world. We would never bring to light the injustice within the soul of belief-based thinkers. There would be someone saying, oh, there's this thing called Judaism that says I need to kill all the Palestinians, and that would never be addressed. Or Jesus says that you have to pay me all the money, says the preacher. That would never be addressed. Oh, Jesus says that God says I should kill all the Iraqis, says George. That would never be addressed. So there would be a greater injustice if belief and image thinking, where currently humans are at, didn't cause conflict and terrible things. But you can only recognize the true justice behind it, inherent in it, if you can move mythologically. You don't take the experiences you have in your thoughts, dreams, and everyday life as reality, because it's not reality, it's a reflection of reality. Being, which we experience as knowledge, is eternal, and it creates or reflects into reality. It's not real. It is a kind of reality for as long as we're here, but not an eternal reality. That's mythology. That's the movement from the apparent injustice of just a physical perception, or Aristotelianism, or materialism, into seeing the inherent justice behind all things. That's the movement into philosophy, or Socratic thinking, or Hellenic thinking. So, in our lives, we can become a personification of our ideals. Hey, if our goal is to be Zeus, how do you do it? By doing it. Imagine you're there. Imagine you're enlightened. Imagine you are now self. And act that way. All others are personifying their level of conflict between belief and understanding. So see mythology in all others. And finally, in every activity or art you use mythology. And look for the metaphysical principles in what you do. You like music? Can you see the dialectic in it? Can you see Aphrodite and Apollo in it? Can you use music in a Hermes way? So, that's definition of mythology in our reading, demonstration in your dream analysis, division in your life as yourself, seeing in others and in your creation. And as a result of all that, you can turn around and reflect on the whole thing, everything you've learned up until here that has allowed you to personify mythology yourself, giving you the state of mythology within yourself as yourself, allowing you to create your own. Why? Because creation comes from the creator. The art, it's something of the artist, is expressed in his creation, because that's the model of creation itself. The level of, or being, what we talk about as reality, reflects on itself and uses itself as the model for the soul and the physical world. So too do all artists reflect something of themselves in their creation. So if you are now personifying mythology in your own life, others to others, you can reflect on that and use that state of being to create your own mythology. As Socrates says, the birth of works that will rival Homer and Hesiod, last for 1,000 years in mankind, be objects of reflection for all human beings, that will last 1,000 years and rival even Homer and Hesiod. That's the conclusion or final step. So those are the four things we've seen in the text of what mythology is. So the mythology as how we share it or represent it ourselves. So what are we doing? We are simply saying, well, the meaning of life is simple: to master the art of the dialectic. 1. What's that? 2. From belief into understanding. How do you do that? Well, you have to love it, Aphrodite, learn it, Apollo, and bring it together into the art Hermes. There's our 3. Okay, now that we have this art as 3, how do we use this dialectic? 4. Philosophy, midwifery, dream analysis, and mythology. And now that mythology we've broken down into its 4 components here. And you could say these 4 components with this higher thing that's the cause of those 4, you can have a 5 there. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 levels. So the sharing as the transcendent first cause, and then the 2, 3, 4, and 5, giving us a way of expressing the meaning of life in 5 different ways. In 1 word, in 2 words, in 3 words, in 4 categories or 4 words here or here, and in 5 with this and its 4 expressions. So depending on how much time you have over coffee, you can express the meaning of life for all beings, what we need to solve problems and bring excellence for everyone, individually, collectively, in either 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, 4 words, or 5. And then hopefully everyone will overhear at the coffee shop and cheer. And everyone will clap. And Emma will say,
I'm cute. Like, it's cutie pie.
Emma will say that she's cute because she sees how smart you are and she wants to flirt with you. And then we will say,
too stupid to understand and also refusing to understand.
We will reject Emma harshly. No, we won't.
And I find that very entertaining.
And R.M. Brown will be entertained at the whole process. So, that's what we did last time. And so with that under our belts, let's move on in to what gets in the way of all of this understanding and embodiment and sharing. The stupid, insidious idea of sin and punishment. Boo. Let's jump into that. Give me 1 second, I need to turn on my fan. So let's get into some reading. Oh. Try that again. Alright. So, the chorus says, hey, by the way, all that stuff that you just said in that fantastic review of the book, I don't like it. I say boo. Because didn't we kill all you guys? Didn't our team kill what we thought was against us? Because we were brainwashed into belief. What about prayer? Don't we pray to some, don't we give up our will to pray that some magic will happen? Or Christian or grace, that magic, there's no rhyme or reason, but maybe God will help you out, maybe. Who do you pray to if you're understanding? Or you have many gods, many metaphysical principles. Which metaphysical, see, if the gods are not literal, who do you pray to? Does it make sense to pray to the metaphysical principle of Artemis? The principle that we can judge between good and bad things to give birth to our problems or our higher insights? You're going to pray to Artemis? Or just use it? See it and use it. The difference between prayer or hope. Hope is another kind of sickness. I hope things will change. Well, that's not going to change anything. Understand the principles and use them to benefit. So that's the significance of understanding. And they say, well, I don't like this understanding because no one can describe what's really going on, and that's all you need to know. They've already been convinced that they can't know and understand, which is silly, because to say reality is unintelligible is not only wrong, it's self-contradictory. I know that you can't know. Well, how do you know that? So the real reason why they're saying that is because then they're trying to convince themselves. Their anger is caused by being a believer that's in conflict, and you are unable to address the injustice you suffered. So that's what keeps our anger alive. But instead of actually addressing it, you project it. That's the anger. Why do you scream it aloud? Are you trying to silence your own doubts and fears? You are listening without hearing the reasons for what you reject. And that's all you can do. Go, nah, Jesus loves me, Muhammad loves me, Allah loves me, Netanyahu loves me, Trump loves me. That's all I need to know. Bleh. Barbarianism without a metaphysics. Or without a mythology that represents metaphysics. So that's where we are. Let's keep reading. I need to have a quick swig of my protein drink. To give me energy, and offer it to Hephaestus, the god that gives power for souls to know the self. So that's who I offer my protein drink to. And I offer my coffee to Apollo because we are going to drink coffee as we read. Jesus. Socrates, I do believe we should explore those ideas that separate us. Unless we review them, we will have not gained much. Certainly sin and error, good and evil, wisdom and ignorance need to be reviewed. So sin versus error, good and evil as a way of understanding the cause of problems, or wisdom and ignorance. Is your toaster broken because it's evil, or because you have ignorance of how to fix it? Which is it? Spoiler alert, it's wisdom and ignorance. Socrates. Our differences should not be brushed off. So let me ask you to start off, says Jesus. Good enough. I would ask this. Oh, Jesus, let me ask you to start it off. So, applause for Jesus because he at least understood that he doesn't have understanding the art of dialectic, and it's the dialectician that should be leading.
Too stupid to disgusting. I'm so disgusted. The more holes, the better.
Nothing relevant in those random drops then. So you start off, Socrates. Good enough. I would ask this. Is what is called evil or bad acts the consequences of not being able to do the good that should be done? Jesus. Yes. And to add to that, some believe there is even punishment. Pardon me. Punishment for an ignorance that cannot be overcome with learning. You can't overcome it with learning. Let's just murder the children in Palestine. We call this sin against the Holy Ghost. We call that a sin against the Holy Ghost. Since even though you don't know if you've blasphemed against the Holy Ghost, eternal punishment is your lot. Even though you don't know you've blasphemed, you are going to suffer forever. Talk about the stupidest fucking idea I've ever heard. But it's fundamental to belief. Christianity. I'll stop editorializing. Would you say then that for these believers that there is a kind of ignorance that is more powerful and pervasive than any wisdom? Or would you counter that there is no ignorance that can stand the light of wisdom and survive? So that's the question. For believers, Are there problems you just can't understand and you just have to shoot the people in the face and cheer? Or is it that there is no ignorance that can survive the light of wisdom? Wisdom and ignorance cannot exist together, says Jesus. Ooh. Would you go along with me and say that it would be foolish to punish for a lack of wisdom if there is a wisdom that can overcome ignorance? Foolish, okay? I called it fucking stupid and disgusting and the most horrible heap of shit I've ever heard, but Socrates calls it foolish, so he has more grace than I have. I am tired of morons thinking they are justified in hurting other human beings, considering problems are just a lack of wisdom caused by false beliefs that they fucking grew up with. Wake up, you toe-headed pricks. Sorry. That's my own thing. I'm tired of seeing the worst people hurt human beings. But Socrates is in heaven. He's not here amongst these towheads, and he is calling it foolish. It's foolish to punish. Yes, foolish. That's a nicer way of saying it. Punishment is foolish. Also, it's a justification for sadism, by the way. Well, I get to inflict the suffering I enjoy doing because I'm a sadist, because I caught you making a mistake. Disgusting. It's all, by the way, it's our idea of justice in our society, so we got some work to do. Some fun to have in changing and learning. Enough editorializing. Your questions carry along the weight of what was said before. I would have to say that from what I have said, Socrates, I would have to say that from what we have said. So, he's forced to a conclusion from what they've reasoned. They've only gone 1 or 2 steps of reasoning, but that's enough to come to a conclusion. What's the conclusion? It's foolish to punish for a lack of wisdom if there is a wisdom that can overcome ignorance, and ignorance cannot survive. So Jesus concludes. So this is what we're learning. We're learning how to reason people through this. Hey, pal, do you think, I know that you think that there is eternal damnation and priests get to abuse children because they're evil sinners and all that horseshit. But is there ignorance that's more powerful than wisdom? Or can no ignorance stand the light of wisdom and survive? They would then be forced to conclude that they cannot exist together, wisdom and ignorance. Therefore, conclusion, step 3, is it foolish to punish for a lack of wisdom if what you've just said, wisdom can overcome ignorance? And so, this is the dialectic, baby. Another way of expressing the dialectic is the questions you pick as the dialectician, as the leader of your own soul and the leader in your conversations with others over coffee, because you're the one learning it. If your questions carry the weight of what was said before, so conclusion, carry that weight over, carry it over with your artful use of questions, then someone like Jesus, who just said it's okay to hurt people, even forever, would have to say from what they have just said, that for the wise it is possible to live without sin. Okay. Now, not really answering the question, but let's keep reading. Interesting that along with its fall goes the value of the fall of sin. So we can say to live without the idea of sin. Along with its fall goes the value of punishment. Could there be a wrongdoer who didn't know what he did was wrong? Surely it would be worth a bit of effort to explore why we do not look at mistakes.
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
As our friend from Some More News says all the time.
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing problems.
To explore why we do not look at mistakes, to see why they occurred, instead of punishing for making mistakes. So a failure to learn makes mistakes possible. Curious. Right? Why are we still fighting Nazis? We haven't learnt at why the Germans became Nazis. Why do we still face extreme inequality and starvation and enslavement of children under capitalism? We're not reflecting on why mistakes have occurred. Making mistakes possible. A failure to learn. Is there any learning in belief? No, it's stagnant. You hear other things, you start with it, defend it your whole life, and die. No change, no learning. Otherwise, you'd have to leave belief. So, why the effort to find why problems are caused? Do you do that with punishment? Nope. So, learning and punishment are incompatible. I too find that something to puzzle over. Do those who suffer painful punishment gain wisdom? Or do they learn the cost they must pay for being caught? Ever noticed how billionaires and right-wingers and fascists and politicians are always liars and scammers and changing the law to hurt people? Because a society of punishment doesn't fucking help anyone. All they are learning is to do it and not get caught. Any extrinsic rewards or punishment just teaches you don't get caught. And by the way, people who are suffering do not gain wisdom. That's why you can't have punishment or sin or blame in midwifery, philosophy, dream analysis, or mythology. It's anti-life. We are here to learn, specifically from beliefs to understanding. If you think life is about debate, defending your beliefs, you ain't going to learn anything. You ain't going to gain wisdom, and we're not going to stop making mistakes. It's just that simple. Once again, belief bad, understanding good. For the towheads in the back.
Unbelievable sluts these days.
Unbelievable sluts these days. Yes, that is the crime of punishment. Punishment itself is the crime. That's the M. Night Shyamalan. That's the M. Night Shyamalan twist. The twist is, hey, it's not the crime that deserved the punishment. Punishment itself is the fundamental crime against nature, life, learning, mind, and reality. Oh, but I'm teaching consequences. You ain't teaching shit. You teach through the dialectic, pal. And how easy is it to do a dialectic if you're suffering, or starving, or have to sacrifice your life for a slave wage? Sorry for my fervor. Anyone watching this probably thinks along these lines anyway, so I don't have to get so animated when I talk about it. But I'm just tired of it. I'm bored.
There's only two options.
Wait.
The problem is that you can't. Where's
Wait.
the joy? Imagine people. You are a fantastic. Disgusting. Unbelievable. We're gonna engage in. I can't walk. Too stupid to under. Whore much. That's weird. Don't be disgusting. Talking about a bunch of slop.
Okay. I was looking for the I'm bored one, but I got too many in that button to get to the one I wanted. It's boring. The crime of punishment. Then no one should be punished for a failure to learn. But rather should be shown its dreadful consequences. That is, the playing out of the mythology of that image so that you don't have to go down that line, which is the whole purpose of the dialectic in mythology or dream analysis and midwifery. I say yes to that. By the way, if you don't turn on... So all of the stuff about religion being a death cult and inevitably leading to the extinction of all life. Its cause as the root analogy of as Abraham killed, so must you. The development through Paul rejecting understanding to make him king shit and him the top of the church, appointed by God, says him. Not Jesus, says him. The killing of the philosophers in 529 AD in the beginning of the Dark Ages. The subsequent crusades. All religions in conflict with each other, with themselves, and with all life. Playing out in the present, in the current genocides and wars and its justification for slavery, oppression, and inequality. And its consequence, its dreadful consequence in the continued suffering and the eventual extinction of all life, is not to blame them and say that you were bad because you were born into that family with that belief system, or bad and you're a sinner because you were born into this period of history where there ain't many people who love understanding. No, it's to see the dreadful consequences of not waking up to the game of philosophy, dialectic, and understanding. No punishment. But we can still be very vocal about the consequences of not awakening Philodainoia. Understanding. By the way, Jesus, the word sin is not Greek. And it carries with it many the early Bibles were Greek. Carries with it many negative associations. However, in the Greek, the word for sin is amartion.
Wow.
And it simply means missing the mark. As an archer would say if his arrow missed the target. Well, what follows? Well, the idea of amartion, or missing the mark, is an error. So there's no issue here. This is fundamental. If you ever meet anyone who believes in the idea of sin and punishment, you can say, by the way, it's a fundamental mistranslation of the Greek word amartion, which means to miss the mark. All of the associations with you being bad and need to suffer, or murdered, or stealing your land, or all that shit because you're a sinner or a heathen, is a fucking lie. It's missing the mark. It's an error. When you have an archer missing the mark, you adjust your aim. You don't run down to the end of the, because it's an archery term, where the archer is and start smacking him in the face, or blow up his house, or starve all his children, or take all his land because he missed the mark. It's stupid. I shouldn't talk like this, because if the people who watch this don't have to be convinced, I just get frustrated with how obvious human cruelty as bad is, and yet how prevalent it is. Anyway, we will do our best to share this with the world through mythology, and hopefully find more people to talk to so I'm not so frustrated. That is true. Amartion does not mean sick or sin. it means to miss the mark or to make an error. That is true, says Jesus. There cannot be a clash between good and evil if good is, the good is. Wow. So the fundamental metaphysical principle behind all things is the one or the good self. Therefore, there's no equally powerful evil up in here at that level of reality. There's not a clash. That's Zoroastrianism, which is picked up by Abrahamic beliefs. This is the devil with his pitchfork, and this is Jesus, the white, blonde, bearded guy living on a cloud. Garbage. If the good is, now, capital I, is, as in exists. So the good exists as reality, the model for creation and the soul, but also the good itself exists in a unique kind of way as ultimate reality beyond even reality itself. That's the puzzle. What kind of is the good if this is existence? And that's the conclusion of the first hypothesis of Parmenides. The first hypothesis of Parmenides is Parmenides describing his idea of the self, the one self. And it spends that whole section talking about thyself, the one that we want to know as know thyself, by really talking about what exists, or the fundamental nature of existence, or ousia, and by concluding, therefore, the one self is, in a unique kind of way, where it doesn't exist the way we've defined it. That's the puzzle at the end of the first hypothesis of Parmenides. If the good is, there cannot be a clash between good and evil, Zoroaster, Abrahamics. If evil cannot know the good without losing its existence, and, oh, that's a good point. And if it lacks wisdom in its acts, it cannot be an opponent in the true sense. It cannot be opponent. If this is wisdom and this is pure existence, you cannot have pure existence and have evil if that's the good. And if this is the idea of the good, you can't have wisdom. So what kind of an opponent would evil be? Can't be supernatural, or at the level of the gods, or the God self. So it would be in a Sunday league for 7-year-olds, whereas this would be the pro league for the billion-dollar athletes. They wouldn't really be opponents. Now, I like that because it uses top-down reasoning. You don't start with the belief that evil exists. You start with an understanding of the metaphysical principles necessary and rationally understood, directly experienced and verified as the highest, and working down you realize, and therefore there can't be evil. Not because I don't believe it, because it's irreconcilable with rational principles. That's how good understanding is. That's why we love understanding. It's just true. Whether or not humans believe in it, that's the drama between our beliefs and truth. That's the drama. Which means in every episodes of Friends, there should be a philosopher who comes in every episode and says a few words that gives these Ross and Rachel and Chandler and Joey and Monica and Phoebe gives them a way of solving that drama. That's what's lacking in our modern mythology. The Logos. That's what we're getting here, and it kicks ass. Socrates. Do the evil, and Jesus said, "Oh, that's true. There cannot be a clash between good and evil if the good is. If evil cannot know the good without losing its existence, as we just concluded, wisdom and ignorance can't coexist, then it lacks wisdom in its acts. Then it cannot be an opponent in the true sense." True it is. Do not the evildoers believe they are justified in their acts? We are the chosen people, says the Jews doing the genocide. However, if justice, says every religion, they're all the chosen people apparently, their beliefs are the ones that are not rationally true or demonstrably true, that's faith, to believe that which cannot be shown in evidence or reason in principle. That's what it means. It's built into the word. Irrationality and immaturity is built into the word, by definition. But God says so, so can't argue with that, unless you got a brain. However, evildoers believe they are justified in their acts. However, if justice is always accompanied with wisdom, then no evil act can be seen as an act of justice because it lacks wisdom. Wow.
Wow.
Whore, 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 whore.
I need to organize my sound drop so I know if I'm getting a good one or a funny one. No evil act can be seen as an act of justice because it lacks wisdom. I do like your question, says Jesus, and it speaks well for those discussions you have engaged in, Socrates. Yes. In those discussions, we went even further. We asked if there is a wisdom that can overcome evil. For if there is, it would be foolish to punish for a lack of wisdom. Because the effects of punishment always bring a kind of suffering that dominates the soul. There we go. It fucks up your psyche. It deprives one of the freedom. It gets rid of your autonomy because now you're a slave to the stupid fucking ignorance and injustice of someone else. To discover the roots of one's folly, and there's no learning involved in that, it's just one arsehole being an arsehole to someone else. So no learning, no freedom to learn, and it dominates the soul. Punishment is fucking stupid in principle. Good God, hallelujah. Beyond that, it leaves untouched the core beliefs that are fundamental to one's ignorance, and it doesn't even work. You don't learn anything because you don't have the freedom to learn, you don't go through the learning process, it dominates your soul because of the suffering, and you don't get to the root cause, which is the fundamental belief that causes your ignorance, and that's the game. It's always the game, it's always been the game, to find the root core belief that causes suffering globally, socially, in relationships, in families, individually, and towards yourself. Self to self. There's always a core belief at the root of man's ignorance. Our job is to find the core cause so we can solve it. Your toaster's broken, find the cause of the break. Otherwise, you won't fix the toaster. Doesn't matter how much you chastise the toaster or kick the toaster or enslave or ground the toaster, you are not going to fix the problem unless you find the cause of the break in the toaster. Makes me a little bit sad how obvious that is, and how we act. We still allow punishment to exist in our society. We keep going anyway. So, puzzling along our way, we can say if there is no justice in punishment, bump, bump, bum, make that a bumper sticker. Then there is no need for hell or Hades. There you go. However, this forces the astonishing conclusion that there is no need for a God that allows or plays a role in punishment. If your God does any sort of punishment, Abrahamic people, then it's no fucking God, because that's unjust, in principle. And how the heck can a God not recognize that punishment is injustice if we nailed it in one paragraph? The effects of punishment give a kind of suffering that dominates the soul. 1, deprives it of the freedom to act. 2, to go through the process of discovering the roots. And because of that, the conclusion is you leave untouched the core beliefs that are fundamental to problems or ignorance. There's your dialectic. Definition, dominates the soul. Functioning, no freedom. So, this is a negative dialectic. What happens if you don't have the logos, or you have this idea of sin or punishment? Definition, a suffering soul. Functioning, no freedom. Others to others, you can't go through the activity of self-reflection and understanding. And conclusion, you do not find the root cause of your problems, so you stay in the problem. A cycle of torture. There's a dialectic, 4 steps, so you can see the dialectic that we're here to master in the thinking of the author. And you can see how being able to say those 4 things in that order to any jerk who still wants to punish people is important in our world. So if we can nail it in 4 sentences, then what kind of a stupid-ass God can't see that? Therefore, any God that doesn't have justice, or, equally so, believes in punishment, is no God. It's a bullshit personification of the ignorance within a sadistic soul. But I'll tell you something. All fucking religions have this. Therefore, all religions are in principle unjust and sadistic in nature. So religion teaches a good morality for kids. I don't think there's a problem in religion or beliefs. I think it's a problem of the church. It's man. Jesus was without sin, but man has sin. Fuck off. All religious beliefs are in principle fucking sadistic. Anyway. Simply because this. Any idea of sin or punishment, child abuse, societal abuse, anti-life. The difficulty is when you are raised in that house, you have to sacrifice your soul for the beliefs that give you a role within the family. But surely not my parents who punished me. They loved me. Surely not my religion. Jesus loves me. The thousands of other ones that we are killing or at war with, yeah, they can go to hell because they can't learn. You can't learn belief, you get it from childhood, so they have to be murdered. Onward, Christian soldiers marching as to war. That's what we sing in church. No. Yes. Of the thousands that you say is wrong, add one more to the bucket, your own. That's maturity. That's rationality. That's integrity. Even your own. Otherwise, why would you be here? If not to learn. Anyway. I'm a bit frustrated with how obvious it is, but how even relatively good people... So yes, okay, but let's be polite. Even philosophers. I found a way of saying the Jews are actually philosophers, maybe. Yes, and we should allow it to exist. Yes, that's right. And everyone is right, kind of. Well, in saying that, if the whole purpose is to move from belief to understanding, but we have already seen the difficulty with people growing up in a religion is they have to, while people who can just use their brain, use their mind, can start fresh, the difficulty Jesus says with his people is that they have to begin. They have to begin assuming the traditions of their fathers are actually true, and then find a way of wangling the literal to the spiritual or analogical. All right, but why, if that's a difficulty current believers are in, then why create the suffering or those conditions for new people? If you can't escape Christianity without going through all the work we've gone through here to say, well, actually, that's Paul and John belief. The Gnostic Gospels and the true reading of the Gospel of Mark, which Matthew and Luke also copied, shows belief is the cause of problems and understanding is necessary. Understanding parables or analogies especially. Therefore, any thinking Christian should drop belief to love understanding and become Socratic or Hellenic. If you don't, the consequences are tragic as seen in the story of Jesus' crucifixion. Didn't magic his way, there's no redemption magicking his way into heaven. The resurrection story, it is known, was added hundreds of years later by the church. It's a warning story. So we've gone through a lot of work to help people who grew up Christian realize that true Christianity is Hellenic, because they have to presume the traditions of their fathers are right. But why create those conditions for new children? And parents will say, well, I've got a right to abuse my children. There's the rub. Addiction to playing out the imitation of the cruelty as a mark of knowing that believers are stuck in. That's the rub. But we can share this understanding, and one day all of Hassan Piker's Twitch followers and all of Asmongold's YouTube followers will follow this channel, and then we'll have a great old time. Lots of people to talk to, lots of fun to have, finally solve problems, and it will be a win-win.
The problem is that you can't reason a position that they didn't reason themselves into. There's only two options at the end of an argument. One, you're wrong, but now you always get to be right about that topic going forward.
So you get to learn something, which is always a plus. Or two, you're right and you get to revel in being right. It's a win-win. So win-win-win-win-win.
Win-win-win-win-win. We'll be winning. Getting fired up in this stream. Fired up like the gift of the dialectic from Prometheus, fire and the dialectic. See, I'm actually being mythological in my fiery spirit. This forces the astonishing conclusion, so props to Jesus for following along in spite of his beliefs. There is no justice in punishment, A. Therefore, no need for hell or Hades, B. This forces the astonishing conclusion there is no need for a God that allows or plays a role in punishment. A, B, C. Hooray. Yes, says Socrates. He says, yes. Yes, it brings to the foreground the question of the nature of the deity we call God. The kind of God we are building together. Not assuming some dead guy you've never met and knows everything and was fucking immaculate in his knowledge. That's stupid. Paul, John, whoever you're believing is, knows everything all at once. We are building together one that knows the mind of man. Because learning plays a vital role in this drama we are a part of. We can say it moves with the spirit of justice and wisdom. We are here to learn. This drama, we've been talking about that today, right? That the difficulty with gossip and modern soap operas is that they have the drama but none of the learning. But learning moves with the spirit of justice and wisdom. Wow. Yes, it looks like you know how to use those Promethean gifts. However, my dear Socrates, should we not consider this? If the cosmos has no place for punishment, dun dun dun, then that means that those who do wrong can escape the consequences of their wrongdoing. Oh, don't like that. What joy those who have committed the worst of crimes must experience if they learn that no punishment awaits them. Then there will be no after-death experiences of a hell in the house of Hades. So this is what is kind of playing the chorus role here. The idea, well, if we don't hurt people, then people think they can do wrong and get away with it. That's not what we said. We said it's important to show the inevitable consequences of ignorance. And even the people who do wrong have been convinced at some level that there is some good served in doing this bad thing. So they're actually motivated by the good. But let's see how Socrates reacts. While there may not be an afterworld of punishment, there is a place where what is deserved plays out its hand with precision and skill. That's a mystery. That's one of the mysteries in philosophy, one of the great ones. Now, if there is a significance to how we live and how well we learn and whether or not we take up this quest of learning, the quest of moving from belief to understanding, if there is a consequence, and there has to be for there to be justice, what could it be? It can't be punishment. That's stupid. It's not an eternal damnation in hell or the house of Hades. That's irrational and mean and sadistic. There can't be a wisdom in that. But what would be the consequence? This is a mystery that I've carried for a long time, and a lot of people have too. Let's continue to read. And bring back our planes. There may not be an afterworld of punishment, Jesus, but there is a place where what is deserved plays out its hand with precision and skill. Where? Well, right here in the cosmos. For this world, this everyday world, with all its sufferings and confusions, is the result of people in the present living out the influences of all that they have learned and cultivated in their present and from their former reincarnations. Whatever the soul has done to others will be done to them. The deed and its consequences are perfectly balanced. In this way, there is a just rendering of deeds and their consequences. However, Pure justice shows itself when the soul reverts upon itself to surface and eliminate these blocks to the soul's excellence. The soul survives death and is reincarnated. Woof. There's a little bit of wisdom for no extra cost on our asses. Isn't that neat? The soul, then they're in heaven, so they know. Soul survives, and it's Socrates, and so bit of bonus wisdom for our asses. The soul survives death and is reincarnated, carrying along with it whatever it has learned and nurtured from its past. Justice plays out its hand, assuring that each soul receives its most proper due. Look at the extreme suffering many souls experience in each of the days on earth, and you'll see the past playing out its justice on earth. Wow. There you go. Where is this balance played out that causes an effect of our living and learning in the present in our next reincarnation? Or our current one. There's a saying, live by the sword, die by the sword. Playing you either in this life or in your next reincarnation, here is where we experience the effect of our learning. Now, ultimately, our job is to learn so we can escape this cosmos or this kind of incarnation to incarnate where Socrates says he is awaiting those who are true philosophers. To be a friend and fellow traveler and guide with the gods and daemons and those who've completed their work here. That's what he says in the Phaedo. But look at the terrible suffering that some souls experience here. Socrates is saying we carry with us the learning and nurturing from our past and our past incarnations into our present, and that's what we play out in the present. And apparently there is each soul receives its proper due. So we see justice playing out on earth. Which would mean that what I was just expressing in the frustration of living in a period of time that my soul has currently reincarnated into, in which everyone is stuck at the level of belief, and there is few, if any, people who love understanding or love understanding with the integrity to actually go through a reflection on their own beliefs and perfect understanding. And therefore, it's frustrating to live in this world where problems could be solved in a day, and it's just not. And even the good people who are trying their best to develop understanding seem to react negatively to this. And therefore, there's very few people to talk to. Would be the playing out of a hand of previous reincarnations. Which has probably led into me being a musician and a streamer. Trying my best to do mythology. I mean, to reincarnate where I've run into Pierre Grimes, someone who is a philosopher, means I've done philosophy in the past, to have such an affinity for dream analysis and midwifery would indicate that I've done that in past incarnations as well. But to incarnate into a world where there's few people who want to play the game, well, that, according to this paragraph, would imply that would be the suffering of an implication of not doing that final step, mythology. Not sharing it enough. Going into the marketplace enough. And yeah, reflecting on my life, it's scary. Being a philosopher, being someone who loves understanding in a world that's understanding, like Pierre said it in a really nice way. He said, in the 60s, where the Black Panthers were trying to challenge the way of being of racist white Americans by showing that they were not monkeys, they had reason, they had humanity. This was a way of being rational, because of course they were, that challenged the fundamental beliefs and way of beings of racist white Americans. And if you challenge the way of being of people and their beliefs, they get savage. That's the savageness, the barbarian. And Pierre met with them and said, hey, look, at least you guys have each other. I'm a philosopher. I challenge everyone's way of being. I got to be careful what I say everywhere, with everyone. At least you have each other. You think you're the most hated in America? Welcome, I'm a philosopher. But, yeah, I guess that's what I'm doing here. Trying my best to communicate it with funny sound drops.
Whore.
See? Standing saying, oh, that's funny to me. She's one of the people who, well, if you know her stream, you know what she's like. Right at the top of people who, intelligence and character, but also inspiration. But not get into that right now. Oracle, Athena, and Emma.
You've been a bad little girl and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now?
See, it's funny. She's doing good work too. And she says that sometimes. That's funny to me. Aaron Brown does good work.
Okay, go ahead.
He says...
But this is probably the I find that very entertaining.
And of course there are others along the way
No one
too.
seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
This guy had to admit that the people in his life who helped convince him to be a conservative in the first place, parents, clergy, other authority figures, were wrong.
I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to eat a monkey.
And then Joe Rogan.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
He doesn't really help, but he also says he doesn't want to eat a monkey. And I think that's funny.
I don't want to eat a monkey. 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 I don't want to eat a monkey.
It's funny because that's like the reach of his learning so far, is that he doesn't want to eat a monkey. It's funny because it sounds funny, but it's also true. Like that's the level of his ethics at the moment. It's sad that is the consequences of that being his level of learning playing out with, supporting fascism. And the Elephant Graveyard does a good YouTube video on his death cult, but yeah, facing the justice. But it also means that if we do read this book and other ones like it, we can say that what we cultivate in the present, we carry with us into our incarnations, into the next kind of life that we will experience. And that's where we play out what we have developed with precision. It's not punishment. It's the consequence of developing that self-identity. But here's the rub. You can experience that in every single random thought and daydream and fantasy. Every single one of those distracting thoughts, random distracting thoughts, or fantasies are the playing out of the implications or consequences of that character that stars in it. That's why when you're meditating or whatever, and you notice you're or focused on anything, fantasies, you're making love, and you notice a fantasy, you can stop. You don't have to play it out. You don't have to go into that reincarnation. You can stop. Hang on a second. Everything will be contained purely in that image. If you reflect, there's the self-reflection and learning we're here to do. With understanding, there's our Usia and Logos together. On that image of the self, you don't have to play out the implications in fantasy, drama, distractions, anything, because you can see it inherent in the image to begin with. Just as, which is a reflection of the principle of reality, so as you go through that and you see it works, you can have better focus, better meditation, better lovemaking, whatever it is you apply it to. Then you can also reflect on that process that you've seen as working and see it's a reflection of this. Or our question. Our question is, hey, if our purpose is to go from belief and massive difference, everything is relative, to understanding, which is the principles of the mind or the Logos in time, allowing us to experience pure Usia or the Logos out of a time or eternity, how is even the greatest experience inherent in what it was a reflection of? So just as our false image of the self is reflected into our thoughts and dramas and experiences and fantasies and things, so too is the true self reflected into knowledge or being and the soul or understanding in reality. So our problems or our vice is nothing other than a shadow or a distorted reflection of virtue. That's it. Vice is just a reflection of virtue, distorted. Just as you can therefore say, belief is a distorted reflection of understanding, or depending on which way you want to fold this map, being a believer is a distorted image of knowing. That's sadism. That's why even a teenage kid is attracted to, well, I'm telling you what Jesus is. I'm not listening. I don't care if you're a philosopher. That's the attraction to being a whatever they are, whatever their religion is. It's the getting to cosplay a Noah as an image of their parents. So there's the distorted reflection into our problems, reflecting the self. And what Socrates is saying is that exact same thing causes our, just as the one or the good self reflects into being, the idea of the good and justice, that reflects into the soul of the universe, so too is there a reflection of that in individuals, because your false image of the self is reflected into the soul that you live out in your next incarnation. But just as in meditation, you don't have to play out your fantasies, daydreams, or distractions. If you turn back and see this as a metaphysical principle of Zeus, and you use the metaphysical principle of Hermes to unpack it, which is using mythology, recognizing that your life is a mythological representation of the inherent principles of self, then you can say, I don't have to live out this daydream or fantasy if I examine this identity that I take for granted as me, my self-image. I use what I've learned in Hermes to trace it back through my past to its root cause, where I picked up this image, address it, now it's gone. If it's sufficiently understood, it's gone. So I don't have to reincarnate into a daydream or fantasy. And that's as true for anyone in any activity as it is for any person in any lifetime. You don't have to suffer the implications of your ignorance or lack of learning in another incarnation. And whatever suffering is involved in that. Should you wake up to this principle that's always going to be true and reflect on your image of yourself so you don't have to reincarnate and suffer the consequences in your next incarnation. Trump, Netanyahu, everyone. Even those with an otherwise comfortable or good life. You're lucky. You don't have as much of a difficulty in doing the dialectic and self-reflection. So make use of whatever time and privilege you have in your incarnation, that you've got internet to see this video, and do that now. So you don't have to suffer the consequences in a next reincarnation of not doing that. That's the justice. There's no eternal suffering, but there is the repetition of just like a repetition of the same thoughts, the same negative self-talk, the same, I can't do it, I'm just a small bean, I'm a bad noodle, I don't deserve it, I'm a sinner, I'm not born in the right place, or I'm not the right gender, whatever, I can't do it because women are less, all that shit. No, that will play out continuously until you address it. That's the dialectic applied to dream analysis and philosophical midwifery. Why? Why can you do it? Because every single one of them contains that image of the self. Every single thought is a mythology. All we're doing is seeing a pattern play out, hierarchically ordering the terms, that's understanding, tracing it back to its highest term or its root cause that has influence over the whole. That's the idea of scope, or the idea of a hierarchical ordering. Addressing it with understanding, comparing it to the truth of justice and beauty and reality, to your image of yourself. That's philosophical midwifery, the use of understanding to find the root cause of your individual problem. And by the way, the same thing happens with dreams. Only dreams contain both that false image of yourself, but plays out that implication or mythology with greater clues. Not only are you a small bean, but you're a small bean being attacked by a dragon. And your dragon is dressed like your first grade teacher. And it's eating your lunch that your mum made when you were at school. Each one of those symbols or mythological metaphors are clues to a specific thing about your past that will unlock the seeing of the root cause, allowing you to free yourself from your problems in this life, and freeing you from suffering the implications of that in your next one. Or as Socrates says in the Phaedo, free yourself from the chains of suffering in this life and the prison of reincarnation. Do that, he says, as his final words, as fast as you can, so you can join me in a different plane of existence, free from that bullshit, and with better men than you find on this reincarnation. Better men because they've done this themselves. They're not going to try and oppress you with their punishment and sin and belief and injustice. Better men and gods, remember, we are learning to be a friend of the gods, and daemons, spirits, guiding spirits, that with better men, gods, and daemons, they are guides and fellow travelers on a different kind of better adventure. That's where I am, says Socrates. That's where I'm going tomorrow when I'll be dead. And if you're a true philosopher, race to meet me there as fast as you can. And by the way, sacrifice a cock, a rooster, to the god of healing. Because if you've done that, you've healed yourself. Which is the kind of learning we are specifically here to do. What we just outlined is how to do it for this lifetime and beyond. And what we have been talking about in the text is what specifically blocks that that exact learning that we've nailed down for this lifetime and the next is blocked from any bullshit idea of sin, because that's fundamentally wrong. It's teaching you that very false belief that causes your problems, and it's in opposition to the true self, so it's wrong in all possible ways. And punishment, which has that effect that you can now represent as a dialectic. You can say, hey, you know why punishment is bad? I'll give you 4 points: a definition, demonstration, division, and conclusion. I'll give you a pure understanding of it. And all you got to do is buy me a coffee. That's what you'll say to your friend. Here it is. It's in the book that bangs the hardest. Why? Because the effects of punishment in definition bring a kind of suffering that dominates the soul. So that's the definition of your soul as the effect of suffering, of punishment. A kind of suffering that dominates your soul. How does it affect your functioning? It deprives you of freedom in your functioning that you need to learn. You can't be forced to learn this. Doesn't matter how riled up Jed gets on this podcast, you have to get curious and want to go through this and evolve to that level to have the good conversations that Jed is frustrated about having a lack of interlocutors for. Freedom, definition, demonstration, or the functioning of that dominated soul, suffering soul. Division, you can't discover the roots of your folly, trace it back. That's division, by the way, division. Division is that stage of reasoning or the dialectic where you've defined the thing, self to itself. You've seen how it functions to others or demonstration. Now you apply that functioning in different ways so you can find themes or ideas, find something common or causal. That causal thing becomes the synthesis that you can now take back to the beginning, synthesis and analysis, that gives you the conclusion. So, punishment gives us suffering that dominates the soul, suffering soul, that functions with no freedom, that prevents you from doing the sort of reflection of your problem through the divisions in your past to find its root cause. Therefore, that root cause is the synthesis that would have allowed you to to solve your problem and escape the suffering in this life and the prison of reincarnation, and playing out the suffering that you will have to go through because of not going through this. But because you're blocked from this, you can't learn, because you haven't found the root cause. So that's the conclusion. Which means you can have those same 4 steps in the positive if you take out the idea of sin and punishment and you add in the dialectic or the logos and love and logos, or ousia and logos. You do it. I'm not going to do it on the board, because I would be depriving you of the kind of learning that you are here to do to escape your problems and escape the suffering of your next incarnation. But what I can do is show you the negative in the text to tell you this is reading. I can teach you how to do it. Read the text, use the logos from the text itself. Don't project your beliefs. That's just going to get in the way. That's going to be the cause of your problems. If you do, that's okay. The way that you project into the text will be another example and can be another clue. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win-win-win-win.
But try not to. Try to keep it in the text. See the structure of so you got the logos terms. So the I should probably write this better. Do it properly. So get the logos terms. Logos terms, as we've been learning along the way, and the dialectic structure handwriting, Jed. Dialectic structure. So there is if exists, if it is, and if isn't. Me? Project? Maybe. You would say that. Says someone who's projecting. If not exists. Now, I'm taking this as the negative. Because sin and punishment isn't actually in reality. It doesn't actually exist. So this is sin and punishment. So, the structure, self to self or definition, self to others, demonstration or functioning, def, dem. Now I'm doing it loosely because I don't want to get too specific to give you some fun, allow you to solve the puzzle yourself. Division and others to others, others back to self is conclusion, and it has 2 steps, analysis and synthesis and analysis. There's 2 steps in that last part. Now we've got a suffering soul. See? So now we've got the structure. Now we look for the terms in the text. If there is a wisdom that can overcome evil or problems, if there is, it would be foolish to punish for a lack of wisdom. Because, here we go, the effects of punishment always bring a kind of suffering that dominates the soul. So, notice, this is the effects of punishment. So I'm not doing a dialectic on punishment. I'm doing a dialectic on the kind of soul that lives in the universe where punishment has removed the logos. Only because it fits with the terms here. How does that function? It functions with a lack of freedom. Notice, a negative. So, while we've been given suffering soul, so it's going to be a dialectic on your soul in a world where sin and punishment exists. Your job is to put in the positives. So, if sin and punishment is the negative, you have to find the punishment. Sorry, the opposite. What's the positive here? What's the positive? And do a dialectic. Okay? Similarly, a suffering soul functions with deprived of freedom. Deprived of freedom. Notice, that's a negative as well. It's saying you don't have freedom, which means, so no freedom means you have to solve the puzzle here. No freedom is a negative. So what's the positive? How does that soul function? You do it. I'm saying you do it not because I'm being a bad streamer, because I'm helping you do the thing that can allow you to escape the consequences of your ignorance and injustice in this life and beyond. Division prevents you to discover the roots. So there is a kind of no discovering process. So there's our division. Remember? A kind of reflection that allows you to see a pattern, chase the pattern back through your past, look for a root cause or a theme that dominates the rest. This is division. No division or no, let's make it down a little bit. So there's no process of discovery. No discovery. Again, that's a negative, meaning the author is specifically giving you a puzzle. He's helping you. So remember, as we read, we're also learning about the mind of the author, or Socrates. So it's not a dialectic to win debates, because Zeus, as we saw, you get to Zeus through the anagogic triad. So we're learning the Hermes, that's the highest of the anagogic triad, the dialectic, to reach Zeus. But Zeus is to be the self that's the source of all that exists. So any small being will play out, or negative image of yourself will play out in your blocks, fantasies, and daydreams. But to be guided by divine wisdom, there's your dialectic, to take care. You're not doing it to impress people with how cool you are, although that would be an added side effect when you talk in this way to your friends at the cafe. Or you tell everyone how awesome the stream is, so I get all of Hassan, Piker, and Asmongold's followers, so I can make the big bucks, which is what this has all been about. Just kidding. But you use it to take care. So he is taking care of us by giving us the negatives. This is how you read. You look for the pattern or the analogical structure, and you look for the missing parts, and you fill in the rest. And I always use the expression of you're walking down, you're playing Resident Evil, you notice that there are pictures on the wall, and there are 2 gems in that one, and no gems in that one. You realize, well, here's a pattern. I'm supposed to find the gems and put them in the spot. Okay? Look for a pattern and look for what's missing and fill it in. No discovery. So notice, yes, you're saying the same thing. There is no discovery, but what would you be doing? How would you say the same thing in the positive? Now, equally so, how would you say the opposite? Different kind of positive. See, this is translating a negative expression into the positive way of saying the same thing. Like, I'm not sitting is the same way as saying, well, that's not, yeah, you're not sitting, that doesn't say much. I am standing. That's the positive framing, but also your job is to find the opposite. If this is negative, the opposite positive in here. What would you be doing here? That's the positive. What would you be doing here? That's the positive. And what would the soul be here? That's the positive of this. So that's also what you've got to do. Because while the book is saying, hey, if you don't have these things, you are going to be stuck. There's no hell, but you're going to reincarnate into a kind of life. Seen a lot of humans out there who are born into terrible, terrible situations with lots of suffering. Do you want to have to do that? How hard is it going to be to awaken what you're here to do in that life? Therefore, do it now, bro. So, no discovery, and therefore the last step in the text. So again, logos is the terms from the text, the dialectic is the structure. Beyond that, it leaves untouched the core beliefs that are fundamental to man's ignorance. So take that. So untouched core beliefs. Again, that's a negative. Frame that in the positive here, and equally so, show its opposite here, self to others. To do that, one more step. Self to others, others back to self. So take your divisions here and unify it. Is there a clue to, in your exploration or discovery, what would you find here? That's the synthesis. What's the thing you're after? And then what would be the effect of applying that back to the start? That's analysis. So that's your quest. one paragraph. He gave you the first one. He's been teaching you the structure. He's not going to do it for you. You can't force anyone to learn, but you can highlight the terrible implications of not doing it. What's the terrible implications? There will be an incarnation. The implications is, so wait, let's see it here. The playing out of not solving that puzzle and others like it is that you will be incarnated into a kind of incarnation where you will have the sufferings and confusions that will influence you as a result of lacking the learning and cultivation in your present. As any blocks to solving that will be itself the carrying on of the implications of former incarnations. So anything that comes up and says, I don't want to do that, I'd rather do something else than solve this puzzle that your favorite streamer has given you the steps for, and your favorite book has given you the puzzle to solve. Anything that comes up and says, I don't want to do it, is simply the playing out, or what makes it difficult, or the justice from your former incarnations. Don't be a slave to it. Don't carry on the tradition from your former incarnations, because the soul survives death and is reincarnated, carries along with it whatever it has learnt and nurtured from its past. Justice therefore plays out its hand, assuring that each soul receives what is most proper due. So anything that gets in the way will be the implications of your past incarnations. Look at the extreme suffering many souls experience in each of the days on earth. Look around, throw a rock and you'll find someone going through extreme suffering on every day on earth. That's the playing out of justice on earth. Which is the consequences of this. If something does not exist, what? That's your question. Take each of these. He's given you the first one. Do this, 1, 2, 3. Do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, which has 2 parts, by the way. And then come to a conclusion. What, therefore, is the thing that you're after here? That if it exists, is that. If it doesn't exist, you get something like sin and punishment. Injustice. And there ain't no God that's truly a God that functions in this kind of a way. That is a gift expressed through a book, mythology, representing the dialectic, allowing you to go through a learning about what's true. There's dialectic applied to what's true. As you go through that, you will find the blocks come up that prevent you from doing it, allowing you to address what's false. He has given you in the mythology that he, the author, has shared, he's used the structure of the dialectic so you can play, you can solve it. In going through this activity, you'll find blocks and images. I can't do it. I'm not good enough. I'd rather do something else. That's going to be what you can use as clues to find out what's false. And as you go through it and carry it and push the implications of it, you will have dreams that guide you along the way. That's the gift. Or that's the functioning of the art of the dialectic being used by Socrates and our author to benefit you. He is demonstrating what he has been defining in this book as our purpose or the soul, the self. To be guided through that divine wisdom to take care. He's giving you a gift that's care. He showed you the implications in this life and the next to inspire you. That's providence. The functioning of the self. The thing that we have been learning about, he is demonstrating himself. So, what a fantastic gift that our author has given all of us. Here it is one more time. You've got 1, 2, 3 on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on this side, question marks. Maybe 7, because we've got 1, 2, 3 parts here. Synthesis, analysis, and conclusion. That's the gift. That's providence. That's the functioning of Zeus. That's where we're headed. That's the sort of person you will be if you practice this. Which is the positive. The suffering in this life and in your next incarnations is the negative effects of not solving this puzzle and others like it. Whereas to be this kind of a person, true care and intelligence, true providence, self or Zeus, that's the positive. It's not a reward. It's just what will naturally follow if you practice this way of being and reflect on the process itself. You will become like this kind of a person. So there's the positive and the negative. Good luck. Have fun.
It's a win-win. Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder, dude?
Have fun and joy and whimsy as you play. If you want to join the Discord and share your work, please do. That's the whole point. That's why we're doing this. To share it and find others to talk to and share our experiences, insights, and difficulties along the way. If you want to follow on Twitch, you can join us in real time or on YouTube. If you want to donate to the channel, there's a link. If you want to find the text itself, there's a PDF, and we were looking at the paragraph on page 126. No. 125. What a gift! Hooray for us. By the way, is it a gift if you don't accept and unwrap it? Hope you do. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. And I play the music. And it goes. Because I pressed the button.